What do you make of Alexander Cochran?
That's a good question. I mean, I find myself agreeing with him on many things, just like I do with these other people. But
Who is he?
he's a columnist, a leftist British guy who lives here. Yeah, he writes for The Nation.
Immorality to think that 9/11 was genuine.
Right. Well, again, his work has just been the sheerest, surface ridicule. You know, he won't go beneath the surface. He did recruit this guy. What was his name? The guy he recruited to do the actual discussion of the demolition. Anybody remember his name? Anyway, Coburn got a guy with some scientific training to write this very bizarre and wildly improbable hypothesis about what happened to Building 7. But that's, again, why do these people do these things? Besides the possibility that they're working for the wrong side, or taking money from people that they can't offend, there's also the possibility that they're operating under pressure from the same psychological forces that we all are. And I think that's true for many journalists and many other people who appear to be complicit. It's denial. It's the emotional effects of this were so shocking that so many people, when they're confused, they like to grab onto some story that makes sense of the world. And this is known by people who manipulate human minds for a living. The CIA torture specialists have this system of coercion which involves shaking a person loose from their picture of themselves in the world and confusing them radically. It can be done through days of torture, locking them up, they don't know what time it is, and so on. And then the operative comes in there and regresses the subject to childhood state, and then takes the role of the parental authority figure. And that way they're able to manipulate the person and basically do whatever they want with that person's mind. It's called coercion. And 9/11, I think, was a textbook example of coercion. And I analyzed this in an article called Apocalypse of Coercion, which is in my book, Truth Jihad. So I think that we've all been coerced by this, some more than others. Some saw through it right away, others took 2 years like me, and some of you were just starting to wake up. But this coercive process works on everybody. It works on scientists. The sociology of science, the psychohistory of science tells us that scientists are human beings. They don't have some perfect window on reality without any social influences. They're influenced by emotions and by other people and so on. And so I think some of these people may very well simply be like so many others of us, just influenced psychologically by this thing and unable to come to terms with it. And that can work on the left in interesting ways. I have a friend in Berkeley who hates the American empire. He's a big fan of Chomsky. He belongs to a Trotskyist party. And he just hates the 9/11 truth movement because essentially he loves 9/11. He thinks it was great, a great blow struck back at the empire. He was very excited about it when it happened. And he just can't give up this perverse pleasure he took in this sort of fantasy of revolutionaries dealing a blow against the empire. And I think there's some of that with people like Chomsky who have the blowback hypothesis. Oh, we deserved it, we've been doing these terrible things. We told you so, we knew, we told you it was coming. And they get psychological pleasure and self-esteem out of having predicted it. So there are all these factors at work. It's hard to tell which one's operating with which person. But people are taking money from foundations. I mean, you don't have to ask any further. They can't talk about this. Jim Marrs is an interesting guy. He wrote a pretty good book on the Kennedy assassination, which was one of the 2 books that Oliver Stone used. Rule by secrecy, however, it goes a little far for my taste. He traces back elite rule, back to Babylon and stuff. Some of that I didn't see.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the 1900s. Kind of
right. Yeah. Once he starts getting into the last couple of centuries, there seems to be a little more evidence. But I'm still kind of an evidence guy. I'm still waiting to see the evidence for some of the assertions that surround this topic. That people who are, these stories about how the money power operates behind the scenes. I'm quite certain that to some extent it does. But as far as the nuts and bolts of who's doing what, I haven't seen enough evidence yet to think clearly about that.
I think a lot of the whole left gatekeeper thing has to do with what is it, Project Mockingbird, where they're all where the government put people in the media to what?
Right.
What? Well, you can Google it, but everybody seems to be following whatever Chomsky says. I think Chomsky has to be working for David Rockefeller, right?
Well, that's what Barry Zwicker suggests. He says he might as well be if he isn't. I don't really know, but yeah, it's true. Project Mockingbird was the CIA plan to influence the media by infiltrating people in key positions. And interestingly, William Colby, retired after being the head of the CIA, did an interview with Rolling Stone magazine in which he said that when he was the head of the CIA, he bragged that he owned was it 200 or more than 100 of the most influential journalists in America. He said, I own the 100 or however many hundred it was, most influential journalists in America when I was head of the CIA. So there is a certain infiltration of the media by the intelligence
Yeah,
services.
he got killed, right?
And then he died pretty shortly after he gave that interview, yeah.
He died out in his canoe, and then he got killed.
Right. And people who specialize in studying covert operations, of course, know more about this than I do. There's a really interesting guy, Michael Andrade, who wrote a book called On the Causes of War that I highly recommend. It's free on the internet. You can download it. And he's been studying the intelligence services and covert ops communities for many years now. He goes to all the spy conferences. Yes, they actually have these spy conferences. And people from different intelligence or even different countries come and share their trade lore. And so he hangs around, and he acts pretty, he's a peace guy, but he's sympathetic with these people. He knows they're human beings. And he's gotten to know these people real well. Anyway, he's coming out with a report on 9/11 this year, sometime, hopefully soon. He argues that 5 separate national intelligence services were involved, or people from those services were involved, and that 9/11 was a very highly compartmentalized intelligence operation.
What's his name again?
His name is Michael Andrade, Andregg. And you can find him if you go to Scholars for 9/11 Truth. His name is right above mine at the top of the alphabetical list.
What's your name?
My name's Barrett. Kevin Barrett.
Okay.